Kieran Lenahan is a husband, a foster dad, and an entrepreneur coach who helps Christian entrepreneurs to grow their business without getting blocked by what slows them down and holds them back. Kieran has a degree in organizational psychology from Davidson College with a focus on leadership, and he earned his certificate leadership coach designation, where he was able to study more about human potential. A New Jersey native, Kieran enjoys spending time with his wife and family, playing basketball, and doing anything involved with being out in the sun. He also is a member of the Young Professional Associate Board for Covenant House, a nonprofit organization fighting youth homelessness and trafficking within North and Central America.
So Stanford, the design school and the business school, they actually did a study on what number of careers or what number of vocations do people think that they could have that would actually be fulfilling for them. And what they found was the answer was not one, it wasn't two, it wasn't three, it was actually 7 on average. And some people on one end of the spectrum actually came up with 20, 30, 40 different career paths or jobs that they could have that they thought would be fun and interesting and fulfilling.
Yeah.
And so I think the first mistake, and probably the biggest mistake that I made early on when it came to thinking about purpose, was I was thinking so narrowly that it has to fit within a specific job title. And what I came to realize was it's actually less about what I'm doing and more about who I'm being.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do I want to be as a husband? How do I want to be as an employee or as a manager, as a leader, or as an entrepreneur? And then that, once I'm solid on that, I can apply that to many different industries, to many different types of jobs, and working with many different kinds of people. And so for me, that shift was huge. And that was probably one of the most impactful mindset shifts that I had when it came to thinking about purpose.
Yeah, I love that, how like we all have these varied and vast career paths that don't always coincide and don't always seem to make sense. But when you go with it, and when you, again, going back to the surrender experiment, when you just surrender into it, that is powerful. That is absolutely powerful. So you also are active within a community that fights homelessness and trafficking, and you're also a foster parent. What made you and your wife decide to become foster parents?
Yeah, so it's kind of a three-tiered kind of reasoning, or three-step process that kind of got us into foster care. The first one is that my wife and I have kind of always had a heart for young children, specifically children who are in situations that they had absolutely nothing to do with creating. And so, people growing up in situations that are just awful, but it was because of mistakes made by people who are not them. So we had that heart. In addition, we were actually surrounded by a community of other friends and family members, and within our church community, that stepped into the foster care process to become foster parents. And so through seeing their experiences, getting really close, like kind of learning how it works, the stories of the children, it kind of opened up our hearts even more to the idea of it. And then kind of the final straw was we were at church, and we both kind of had this crazy thought at the same time while we were listening to one of our pastors who was a foster parent, and him and his family adopted 3 children. Unexpectedly, they were kind of going in just expecting to foster 1 kid and see where it goes. And we both separately but simultaneously had the same thought of, what if we became foster parents before we tried to start our biological family? Mm-hmm. How cool would that be? We almost didn't talk to each other about it because we thought it was too crazy. But later on that day, we were like in the car driving to her parents' house, and my wife Dana said, "Hey, what did you think about that sermon today?" And so I ended up sharing kind of that thought that I had, and she shared, "No way, I had the same exact thought. This is something we should maybe think about." So right then and there, she was like, all right, she's on board. She knew for sure, like, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, I want to take some time to process this. This is a pretty big decision. But ultimately we decided like, yes, this is where we feel like this is a place where we can put our faith into action. This is a place where we feel equipped. We feel like we have the resources and the family support to be able to do this really well. And so that was kind of the decision making that went into that.
So is your foster child really young, or what age?
Yeah, so he is turned 11 months old a few days ago. So
Oh,
he's really
snap.
young. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
he's a
he's very
babe.
young.
So, how are you? I mean, there's got to be so many emotions that go into fostering a child, because whatever situation he was in was obviously not good. Had parents that could not care for him for whatever reason. And then, I mean, this is basically your child, and you're in a situation where at some point you will have to give him away. How are you dealing with those emotions? How are you preparing yourself for that loss, that pain, the whatever words you're using to describe it?
Hmm. Yeah, I would actually say it's actually more difficult than that, because there actually is a chance that we could adopt him eventually. So it's even more open ended, and that makes the emotional part of it a little bit harder, because we don't know from the start, like, all right, he's definitely not going to stay with us. So we can just from the start prepare ourselves for that. So in terms of dealing with it, it has a lot to do with leaning on our community, on our family, on our close friends, and on our church community to be able to stick with us through the ups and downs. We've had him since he was 3.5 weeks old. And so like we took him home from the hospital. So for all intents and purposes, he has been our kid. Like he doesn't know anything else.
Right.
And every like 3 weeks, we start thinking like, oh my gosh, what would it be like if he went back to biological family, whether it's his parents or another family member. And I'll just be honest, it's a really sad and really difficult thought to deal with. So oftentimes my wife and I will just sit on the couch and kind of allow ourselves to be in that space, cry, honestly, be sad, and just kind of feel those feelings. And then, from there, just kind of get back to living, back to being his parents for right now. And just understanding that even if he did go back, what we've been able to give him in stability and love and in a safe home, that will have an impact on him down the road. Like he now has the ability to develop trust. He
Yeah.
now understands what it's like to be loved and cared for and safe. And so that's a gift that can't really be taken away. So we definitely take some solace in that. But I'd be lying if